So you want to take on the off-road Xterra World Championship triathlons in Maui? Well, I just got back from there a week ago, and let me tell you, there are some things that I was not prepared for. So by the end of this video, you're going to learn firsthand all the things that I didn't know so that you can be prepared to have an awesome Maui experience. Hey, it's Coach Eric here, bringing you weekly training and racing tips to improve your off-road triathlon experience. For many of you, the Xterra World Championships in Maui is the goal, just to be there. That was my goal. I got to experience it. It was amazing. It was grueling. I thought I was prepared. In a lot of ways I was, but there's some specific parts of that race or any race that has a really windy swim and a lot of mud on the bike course and on the run course. It didn't actually really rain during the day, but the race was so muddy, there's a lot of things you want to take into account for that. So let's get into what you need to do to have a successful Maui experience right now. So of course it all starts with the swim, and with big waves and open water, you need to start months before that with strength training. I did not feel like I was strong enough, didn't use enough weights and strength training to really have that force to muscle through some of those waves. Also in the swim, you want to increase your yardage in training. I did the distance just fine. A mile swim is no problem, but I felt a little bit more fatigued battling the waves and being rocked around than I would in a very calm pool or a very calm lake. So I would have increased my yardage with the swim. Number three, I would practice in terms of sighting, practicing more frequently. There was times where I do a quick sight and I couldn't see anything but a big wave in front of me. And so being able to take several strokes with your head up and develop a little bit of that strength in that position, or just sighting and then sighting again and again, maybe 3 times in a row, and then doing several strokes and then sighting twice in a row. So with increased sighting. Then very specific to the race is the shore break. You have to go into the shore break and out, total of 4 times, in and out, and then in and out as you come on shore halfway through the race. And actually that was the hardest part for me, is the entering and exiting the sand. The water just either throws you and spins you, or it pushes you back. And so even though you're getting a lot of the waves pushing you from behind to help you swim faster to the shore, if you're not kind of looking behind you, it'll actually go over top of you and then maybe pull you back out a bit. So be aware of that. And really, any open water swims you can do, even if it's in a calm lake, that's better than being in a pool, because you're not practicing pushing off the wall, so you're building a little bit more of that strength and getting used to that position. As you feel tired, you got to focus on keeping your hips up. Okay, so then on to transition. So both transition 1 from the swim up to the bike is uphill. So when you get out, get some quick strides. Shorten that stride to get those feet moving. It is a fairly long way up the hill. And then for T2, it's going from the transition area up again. And so as you're running out with your bike, kind of getting those short strides off the bike and onto the run, get that quick turnover going, increase that cadence so you get that rhythm going after being on the bike. So the bike was a mud fest. I've never had to stop so many times to clean the mud out. And I always wear full fingered gloves when I ride. And I thought that would be fine, and it really wasn't. As the gloves got muddy, I couldn't get my finger into, the gloves were getting in the way, and so wearing something like this would have been so much better, where I still could have had the grip that I was needing, but your fingers would have actually been a good tool to basically get a lot of that mud out. The other thing that some people were doing was they were using a longer, straight, thick tire lever. Some pro tips were to, chopsticks, espresso spoon, anything that can kind of get in there that's pointed to get that mud out. I used the plastic tire levers that are about half this size, and they really did nothing for me. The other thing is to really practice walking your bike uphill. I've walked it flat, but never practiced walking uphill, perhaps even maybe carrying it a bit. I've never had a triathlon where my lower back was so sore, and it was because of all the pushing and carrying the bike uphill. Not to mention, you want to make sure you're riding a lot of sustained uphills. The first part of the course is a lot uphill, and it takes a dip down and then goes up again. So climbing for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes at a time would really help you out. With all that climbing and walking, you have some grips on the front of your shoes perhaps. A lot of people when they're at the course were switching to a thinner tire, even down to 2.0. All I had was 2.4, which is just too wide. And also having a mud tire. I had a kind of an all-around tire that was okay with like wet or maybe some rainy conditions, but in the complete mud, the tire really didn't do much to get me through that muddy stuff. So still talking about the bike, you might not be able to practice in horrible muddy conditions, but at least practice in some wet conditions. If it ever rained, I totally avoided the trail and did the trainer indoors or just wait until it dried up before I hit the trails. Also, you're going to be out there a whole lot longer with the mud and exerting more effort. So I plan on taking 2 to 3 bottles, and I ended up using 3 or 4. So more hydration, more nutrition, and especially more electrolytes. Again, you're just out there on the bike longer than you think, up to an hour. And so just be prepared for that. 2 other things is that it's a lot of the course is shaded, which is nice, but it actually traps the humidity in there. So it'll actually feel really hot and humid, despite not hopefully getting a sunburn, which is kind of nice, but just knowing that that's sort of what you're up against and it may affect your breathing. The other part of the bike is the pedals. There's so much mud. They got stuck up in the pedals. I thought of a couple things. One, again, having some sort of utensil that I mentioned earlier about cleaning it out. The other thing is, what kind of pedals do you have, and are you able to easily clean them out if there were to get mud in them as you're clipping in? I did see a few riders who actually passed me with flat pedals. They weren't, while I'm kicking the dirt off my shoes and my pedal because I can't clip in because there's so much mud on both my shoe and my pedal, they're just zipping along past me because they just are putting their shoes on top, wore like a trail running shoe, and so they could dig into the ground better than I could with my clip bike shoes. Okay, that was a lot for the bike. On to the run, only a couple of things. Number 1, I would really recommend trail shoes. I know in other videos I've said you don't necessarily need trail shoes for off-road triathlon. This is one of the races where you really should have trail shoes. You could get by without like a true mud shoe. If anyone had like a standard trail shoe with some grips, that seemed to be sticky enough to help most people do pretty well. Mud trail shoes were a bonus, but anybody who had like road flats was really slipping and sliding and fell several times. The second thing is that glove you wore for the bike. I was gonna wear my gloves on the run for the purposes of as you're skidding around corners and going downhill or trying, you're slipping, you could grab onto a tree and have that grip. Also going uphill, there were several times where it was so slippery, started to slide back a bit, and if you grabbed onto a tree, you could kind of pull yourself up a bit. But my full-fingered gloves that I wore that are not these during the race were so caked in mud and so heavy. As soon as I got done with that bike, I threw them off and just ran without gloves during the run. The final piece of the run that's mostly self-explanatory when you look at the actual profile of the course is it's basically 3 miles up and then 3 miles back down. And it doesn't literally do that when you get back out on the course, but it is deceiving. And then it's the switchbacks kind of going back and forth all uphill for several miles. So overall, you'll do well with that run course if you practice those sustained ups, 5 to 15 minute climbs, and those sustained down 5 to 15 minute descents, especially when you're fatigued, to prepare you for that race. So that's the quick swim, bike, run transition of how to prepare before you go to Maui. It was an amazing race. I want to go back. The frustrating part for me was just that a lot of these tips I talked about with you today, I wasn't prepared for, so I know I would have done a whole lot better if I had just known these things. And so I am passing it on to you because that race is tough enough, let alone if you don't have some of the equipment or you throw in some of these elements of the big waves and the mud. So email me if you've got any questions, put a comment below. If you've been to to Maui, or what are the things that are on this list that have helped you, or please add, engage with the community below by adding to the list and what really helped you prepare for Xterra Maui. And I hope to see you at Xterra Maui. But before then, I hope to just see you on the trails.